lot of technical issues at the moment. My computer is not working. I cannot get the camera to work. I've tried restarting, updating drivers. I've tried everything, and I couldn't even test it. So I've just joined with my cell phone. All I can do, and I do apologize for that. I haven't live streamed on my cell phone before, so I'm not too familiar with some of these settings here. Now I'm not too sure what's going on. I've clicked something and I've got things showing up. Okay, it's asking me for a filter and I'm trying to say no filter, thank you. All right. Let's see. Okay, I don't want to waste anybody's time. It's been already a bit of a crazy morning. I'm a little bit frustrated because of this whole computer situation, but let's get started. I still have some really valuable information for you. And, you know, I think it's something worth sharing. So even though I'm having all these technical issues, I do want to share this information with you. I can see that my camera is not so great, so is what it is. What can you do? So basically today I wanted to share with you how to sort of get back into English after the summer holiday. Most of you are in the Northern Hemisphere, it's the summer holiday, you've taken a break, and I wanted to give you some tips and advice on how to really get back into English after you have taken a break. It could be a long break, maybe it was a short break. I want to give you some things that you can do to make this transition back into using, learning, studying, living English a little bit easier and more stress-free, because it's really stressful just learning another language. So I wanted to give you some things that you can do to make it a little stressful and easier to start learning a language again after having a break. All right, so I'm gonna dive right into it and start giving you some of this advice. So one of the things that you can do, or at least something to mention before I get started maybe, is that these tips can also be used even if you didn't go on a summer break. All right, they can also be used if you're currently learning English right now and you didn't take a break. All right, implementing some of the advice and tips and strategies that I'm going to give you today could help you right now, even if you haven't taken a break. Okay, so that's just something to consider. I still don't like the quality of my video, so I just want to see if my Wi-Fi is connected to a good one. Let's see if this helps a little bit, just to help with the quality. I know it's not so bright, my camera's made it really dark, or maybe that's YouTube. I really don't know. I'm normally quite good with technology, but today or this morning has been not one of my finest. So let's just get into it. The first thing that you can do to get back into English after taking a break, or maybe not, but the first thing that you can do is sort of assess your current level. All right, so basically what I mean here is you want to know where you're at right now. Okay, it's very hard to know what you're going to do or what you should do if you don't know where you are right now at this stage. And if you've taken a break, you've probably lost a little bit of the language. You've maybe forgotten a few things because you're out of practice, you're a little rusty, as we like to say, and that's perfectly normal, okay? If you stop going to gym, okay, you are going to lose some of that muscle and you're probably going to gain a little weight depending on the purpose of why you were going in the first place. And it's the same with your English skills. If you've taken a long break, you're going to have lost some of those skills. So we need to kind of assess where we are right now so that you can figure out what you need to do going forward. If you don't know your current level, it's going to be really difficult to move forward. So basically, how do you do this, right? Because it's one thing to say, well, self-assess, see where I'm at, but how do I do that? Well, the first thing you can do is take an online test, take an online level test. There are plenty of them online. I know that BBC English has one. I'm pretty sure Cambridge has one too online. Maybe even Oxford has one as well. So there are ways to assess your English level online. So you could try take one of these level tests just to kind of see where you are. All right. That's the first thing. Remember, a lot of these level tests are not full tests. They're just going to give you an idea of where you might be. You can also do a self-assessment. So basically, take all your old materials and kind of review them and refresh on them and sort of monitor how much you might have forgotten, right? Your old materials are an indicator of what you've already covered and probably likely know and have used. If you've forgotten most of it, then that's a good way of knowing what you should review first or refresh on first and sort of where your level is. It will tell you whether you've lost some of your English skills. Okay. Another thing that you can do is look at your speaking and writing samples. So this is another self-assessment that you can do. You can record yourself speaking, or you can do some writing activities and then review them to kind of see what is your level, what areas might you need to work on. So, you know, you could watch a movie or watch a video on YouTube and try doing a speaking or writing summary on those videos or movies or series or something that you've read online, and then sort of record yourself speaking, of course, because how are you going to review it if you don't record yourself? Writing is a little easier because it's on paper or it's in a Word document. So you can try doing that as well and sort of seeing, well, where am I making mistakes? What is my pronunciation like? What about my grammar structures, punctuation? Obviously, if you're doing speaking, you're going to focus on things more like, did I get all the details? What structures am I using? Did I, use the right verb tense, for example? And then what is my pronunciation like? And for writing activity, you're going to focus a little bit more on things like grammar structures, punctuation, the flow of the piece, and then also how much you remembered, etc. So just choose which one you prefer. All right. Now, one of the things that also can help you in this sort of stage of easing back into English is doing what I call a SWOT analysis. Well, I don't call it this. Everybody calls it this. It's a work industry sort of term. It's a SWOT analysis. If you don't know what that is, it basically means an analysis of your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. So SWOT. A SWOT analysis basically allows you to identify strengths and weaknesses in English, any opportunities that you have access to, but then also threats, things that could make it harder for you to sort of improve your English or focus on your goals. So a SWOT analysis, especially the strengths and the weaknesses, can be a good way of identifying what am I already good at, so I don't need to focus so much on that in the beginning, and what am I weak at? What could I really focus on now that's going to make a big difference in my English or my daily life or how I'm using English, those situations that you're using it in. So to give you some examples of strengths, so maybe you did a speaking or a writing activity, or you just kind of know this about yourself. Strengths could be anything like using grammar correctly, having pretty good pronunciation, being easily understood, being able to comprehend an article quite easily. These are all examples of strengths that you might have in English. examples of weaknesses, and I'm sure this is the easy part. We all know what we're bad at. We struggle to look at what we're good at. So don't forget to really be honest about your strengths as well, and try and be not so subjective, which is basically the opposite of objective, which means don't bring your feelings into your assessment. Try and keep your feelings out of it and focus simply on the goals that you want to achieve when you assess these things. So with weaknesses, this could be anything like limited vocabulary in specific kinds of topics that you need to use English for all the time, like business meetings, for example. Maybe another weakness could be listening to difficult accents. Maybe you find the Indian accent quite challenging, or the Australian accent is confusing. A lot of my students also struggle with some of the British accents. So that could be a weakness that you identify in yourself. Okay? For opportunities and threats, this is basically sort of just trying to identify what you do and don't have access to, what is going to help you learn and what is going to prevent you from learning. Some examples of opportunities could be something like having an exchange partner. Maybe you have access to an exchange partner. That's an opportunity to practice your speaking skills. Maybe you have money to invest in a good course or self-study program, or a coach or a teacher. That's an opportunity. You've got some extra money, you can spend it on doing some courses, anything that could help you reach your goals. Okay. Threats are things like not having enough money. So maybe you don't have extra money to get a teacher, right? That is a potential threat, or you can't buy a course. Doesn't mean that you can't solve or work around this threat. The threat is basically just identifying what could cause a problem and then figuring out how you will work around that. Another good example of a threat could be time. Okay, I hear it very often, I don't have time, I don't have enough time to learn English. And the truth is, you do have the time, you don't know how to use your time efficiently, or how to use your time well enough that you are maximizing. You can really learn English in 10 minutes a day if you're doing it effectively and you're focusing on the right things. Time normally isn't the problem. The problem is not being able to know how to use that time in a good and effective way. So that's something just to keep in mind. And that's another common example of a threat when it comes to our English. A challenge, something that we find stops us from reaching our goals. Okay, it becomes a problem for us. So some advice when you are assessing your level and trying to see, what do I need to work on? What am I already good at? The first thing, and I mentioned it earlier, is be honest and objective. Okay, it's very difficult to be honest with ourselves. We always want to focus on external factors. So really be honest with yourself on your strengths, on your weaknesses, on your level, and what you need to work on and what you don't need to work on. There's so many things to learn when it comes to English. If you're not honest or objective, you're going to struggle to focus. All right, you're going to waste your time and it's going to take you longer to reach your goals. So really try and be honest with yourself. And remember, we're not trying to break ourselves down. We're just trying to identify what we need to work on. It's impossible that somebody is good at everything. Okay, I do teach English, but I'm not good at everything when it comes to teaching English. I need feedback from my students on areas where I can improve, and then I have to do research and I need to do the work to improve on that. It doesn't just happen. It's not magic. It's work and effort and identifying and knowing what I need to do. Another thing is to focus on your areas of weakness. And this is why I recommend doing the SWOT analysis. If you do the SWOT analysis, you identify your weaknesses, and to ease back into English, you should focus on your weaknesses first, okay? If you're already good at something, you don't need to practice or research or do as much work on the things that you're good at. You need to focus and do work on the things that you're not so good at. So focus on your weaknesses first, okay? And the other thing is that's really important is to keep records. All right, keep lots of records, keep writing samples, speaking records. All right, remember to record yourself speaking. Keep any articles that you read or any exercises that you do so that you can revisit them and assess your level. Know where you're at and continuously assess your strengths and your weaknesses. Okay, so that's one of the things that you can do to start easing back into English, is just sort of writing a small list of where you're at, your strengths, your weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and then that will tell you what to focus on, your weaknesses. And by knowing what you want to focus on, instead of trying to focus on everything, pronunciation, grammar, vocabulary building, business English, general English, small talk, punctuation, there are too many things, all right? Parts of speech, there are just too many things to do all at the same time. So use this as an opportunity to identify your weaknesses so that you can make it much simpler and stress-free on what you're going to focus on when you start again. Okay. The next thing, or another thing that's really going to help, and you've probably heard this before, it's setting goals, and more specifically, setting SMART goals. Okay, a little refresher if you don't know what SMART goals are. SMART basically stands for 5 things that you need to think about when you set a goal in English or in anything that you're trying to be good at. So whether it's painting, exercise, losing weight, being less angry, right? We need SMART goals. So what does SMART stand for? So S is specific, M is measurable, A is, I've now forgotten. What is A? So S for specific, M for measurable, A for actionable, there we go, R for realistic, and T for time bound. Okay, those are the 5 key ingredients to setting SMART goals. Okay, so when we set SMART goals, we need to first identify what are the objectives. What do we actually want to do? If you did the SWOT analysis, you know that you need to work on your weaknesses first. So maybe you identified one of your weaknesses is vocabulary for business. All right, this is somewhere that you need to use English often, and that is maybe one of your weaknesses. By identifying that, you now have your specific goal. Improve my English for business, but we can get even more specific. Okay, the more specific your goal is, the better. So maybe you use English in the workplace a lot for meetings. Okay, so now your goal could be learn English vocabulary for meetings. Okay, it's very specific. We know exactly what we need to focus on. Okay. We then, if we want to measure it, we've got to find a way of being able to see if we're making progress. So there has to be some kind of test or review or something after a period of time of working in this area where you can test your knowledge. You know, do you find your meetings are going better? That can be assessment. An assessment can even be how you feel about your English in a business meeting. So your assessment can be whatever you want it to be, whatever you need to measure your progress. For some people, progress is feeling more comfortable in a meeting. For other people, progress is understanding all the native terms that might be used in a meeting. Different types of progress for different types of people. Okay, so just keep that in mind. How are you going to measure that progress? A, as I said, is for actionable. And basically what we mean here is that, are you able to actually take action on that activity? So for example, If you decide, well, I'm going to learn meeting vocabulary by buying an online course that costs $500, but maybe you don't have $500 to spend on a course. So is that goal or idea actionable? Can you actually do that? The answer is no, you can't, because you don't have the money. You're basically trying to do something that you cannot control yourself. And this is where a lot of people get stuck on the goal setting. Is if it's something that is not in your control, then it isn't actionable. Okay. If your goal was to be comfortable with business meetings in 3 days, but you didn't have 3 full days or 10 hours a day to study those things, it's not actionable. You don't have that amount of time. That resource isn't available to you. So actionable needs to focus on things that you can control. Do you have the money for it? Do you have the time for it? Do you have the resources? Do you have access to whatever you need access to? Or is something going to prevent you from accessing it? Like time, money, people, all right? It could be anything. So actionable, make sure you can actually control how you are going to achieve that, okay? Realistic, okay? This is another thing. I'm going to learn meeting vocabulary in 3 days, but I only have 10 minutes a day. It's not realistic. Do you really think you can learn all the vocabulary that you need to have a business meeting in 30 minutes? Is that realistic? No. Okay. Another example of setting an unrealistic goal could be, I'm going to study English 1 hour every day. Realistically, if you are a mom or a dad and you have children and you like to go to gym because you want to keep healthy, but you also like to cook, or you can't afford takeout, so cooking is easier, you probably don't have an hour every day to do English. So is it realistic to expect that you would be able to do that? Probably not. Okay, it's not realistic at all. So that's something to consider. When you set your SMART goal, is it realistic? Do you actually have the time? Do you have that amount of money? Do you have access to those resources? If it isn't realistic, then it's likely that you're not going to achieve your goal. You're going to have a lot more challenges, okay? And then T is for time bound. This basically means that you have to have a deadline, okay? A realistic deadline. So if you decided business meeting vocabulary and phrases and listening skills is what I'm going to focus on, I'm going to give myself 6 months to maybe see an improvement in this area of my English. That would be realistic, but you're also giving yourself a time-bound deadline. Without the deadline, it becomes an open-ended goal, which you're going to consistently push back that deadline. Okay, so that's something to consider when setting SMART goals, which is a way that can help you really ease back into your English in a very stress-free way. Because if you don't know what you want to focus on and it isn't realistic, you're probably just going to be frustrated, okay, all the time. That's not stress-free. Okay, stress-free is knowing exactly what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and making sure that you can actually do it. We don't all have the same amount of time or resources, so let's set good, realistic goals that create a stress-free way of getting back into English, or just learning a language in general. Okay. So some things that you need to consider is you need to consider your schedule. You also need to be flexible, okay? Sometimes things don't go according to plan. That is normal. It's perfectly normal that things will not go according to plan. Your child gets sick, so now you can't study. Or the meeting that you were looking forward to testing your skills in doesn't happen anymore. It happens all the time. That is life. Okay, so don't worry about it. Be flexible. track your progress, all right? Make sure that you are tracking, that you're actually moving forward and making progress, okay? And start small, okay? Your goal doesn't have to be this big thing. Your goal could be as simple as study English for 2 minutes a day. That can be part of your SMART goal, all right? Of course, we want to make it specific, so it could be study meeting or study English for meetings 2 minutes a day. Okay, it's a small goal. It's easily achievable and realistic as well. All right, so that's the second sort of way that you can ease into English, something that's a little more stress-free or help you feel a little less stressed. So let's look at another thing that you can do. And I love talking about this. I love talking about habits. And more specifically, I like to talk about micro habits. So you're probably going, what is a micro habit? Oh, okay. Micro is a synonym for small. So a micro habit is basically a small habit. We get habits that can be really big, like losing weight. It's a big habit, okay? Or it's a big goal. So maybe the habit is exercising for 30 minutes a day. That's a big habit to develop. A micro habit could be something like exercising for 3 minutes a day. Or not even exercising for 3 minutes a day. It could be something like have a glass of water with every meal to help you lose weight or be healthier if that's your ultimate goal. It's such a small thing. It's really easy to do, all right? But it actually over time compounds, meaning it just adds the benefits. So after 6 months of drinking water with every meal, the results that you might get from that could be quite huge, okay? Because it builds up over time. Your skin could be better. You might actually lose weight because maybe you eat a little less food because you drink a bit of water and you didn't realize you were overeating. There are so many things, and we can do it without English too. So micro habits are easy to do actions that seem insignificant, but actually when you do them consistently, time and time and time again, they actually make a huge impact on your overall goal. So something to consider. When I talk about micro habits, the best way that you can really get into it is to start with what I call micro moments. Okay, so basically, instead of trying to sit down for an entire hour and study English, start with sitting down for 1 minute. Okay. What I like about this is that you're probably not just going to do a minute. You're probably going to extend that session just a little bit. But remember, the goal is just a minute. And if a minute is all that you do and you've achieved your micro habit. You've done it. Okay. So start with smaller moments of how you are going to improve your English. It could be 1 word a day. It could be 1 word a week. It could be watching 1 video about business meetings. It can be anything. Just start with a small moment. Another thing that you can do, which kind of goes to the time, could be the 2-minute rule. What I like about the 2-minute rule is that you're basically committing to do something every day for just 2 minutes. That's it. All right, 2 minutes, not a lot of time, right? So try and implement a 2-minute rule. So for example, I'm going to listen to a song in English for 2 minutes. That's it. That's all you do. That's your micro habit. Or I'm going to record myself speaking in English for 2 minutes. That's your goal, okay? Or the micro habit that you want to develop. Again, what will likely happen is you'll do a little bit more than 2 minutes, but the idea is that's actually not the goal. That's not the point. The point is to just start with 2 minutes. And if you feel like you can do more, if you have the energy to do more, if you're in the space to do more, then do more. If you had a terrible day, you might not want to do more than 2 minutes, but do just 2 minutes. And when those 2 minutes are finished, go do something else. All right, if you're having a bad day. The idea is to just start small. Okay, When it comes to habits, one of the things I also talk about quite often is habit stacking. I love habit stacking, really just because it has so many benefits. Okay. Basically, habit stacking is when you take a habit that you've already got and you add another habit to it. So for example, most of us hopefully brush our teeth every day, more than once. Think of something that you could do in English that you can add or do while you brush your teeth. It could be something as simple as watching a quick YouTube video. While you're standing in the bathroom brushing your teeth, play an English video and listen. Practice those listening skills and comprehension skills. All right, that's one habit, watching a video in English every day that you stack or add to brushing your teeth, for example. This is something I actually recommend to a lot of my students. But there are lots of other habits that you're doing. So identify what are some of the things that you do every day. Maybe you make yourself a cup of coffee every day for lunchtime. Maybe you always like to eat lunch away from your work desk to get a bit of a break. You don't have to use your whole lunch break, but there could be something that you do there. Maybe you every afternoon take 20 minutes to read a book. Maybe you can take 3 minutes of that, or instead of 20 minutes reading a book in your language, you could do 20 minutes of reading a book in English. Okay, so basically find ways to add English to habits or new habits to existing habits. All right, you're already eating 3 times a day. Adding a glass of water to your food is really easy because you already go and get your lunch and your breakfast. Maybe you don't eat 3 times a day, but for example, so go and get the water and do that. That's basically what I mean by habit stacking. Okay, you can also use reminders. All right, put a reminder on your phone, put a little sticky note. All right, so when you go brush your teeth, maybe you have a list of your vocabulary or a little sticky note that says, watch an English video, okay? Just to remind yourself. At some point, you won't need those reminders anymore because the habit will hopefully stick and have been built, okay? So let's look at what some of these micro habits could be. So just to give you an example, you could learn 1 new word every day. Maybe you read 1 sentence in English when you have your morning coffee or just before you go to bed. Maybe you could do a 1-sentence journal. So have a little notebook or a journal and you write 1 thing in English about your day in that journal. Maybe you add a few English social media accounts onto your Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, whatever it is that you're using. So take all those social media sites and go find some creators with content that you would enjoy in your own language, find it in English. So the next time you're on social media, you get a little bit of English content. All right, that's bringing that habit into your habit of scrolling on social media. Okay, and then you could do the voice recordings. Maybe at the end of every day, instead of doing the 1-sentence journal, you can send on WhatsApp a recording to yourself or use your voice recording app on your cell phone. And instead of writing a 1 sentence a day, you record yourself saying 1 thing a day. You can talk about what went well, how you're feeling, what happened, who you spoke to, an interesting conversation you had, just 1 sentence where you record yourself and then you listen to it. Those are some ideas of micro habits that you can do. Now, when it comes to building habits, there's a few things that I want you to remember. Consistency is more important than intensity, okay? Consistency is doing something every day. Intensity is the amount of effort that you do something with. So for example, we often get taught that consistency is an hour of English every day. Now, that is consistency, it's doing English every day, but we're also focusing on intensity, an hour every day. The intensity is not as important as the consistency. So consistency could also look like 5 minutes on Monday, 20 minutes on Tuesday, 2 minutes on Wednesday, an hour on Thursday, 2 2 minutes on Friday, 5 minutes on Saturday, and a minute on Sunday. That is still consistency, okay? Because you're still engaging with English every day. It's the intensity or the time and the effort that's changing. And intensity is not as important as consistency. So remember that when building a habit, it's not about trying to do as much as possible. Every day, we just don't have the same amount of energy, and that's okay. So rather, instead of going, oh, well, I didn't study for an hour today or yesterday, so I'm just not going to do anything today, rather go, you know what, I'm just going to do a minute. I'm just going to say one thing to myself in English. That's consistency. So don't confuse the two, okay? Remember to build momentum slowly. Now, you're probably looking at all these examples of habits and small habits that you can do. When I say to build momentum slowly, what we mean is try not to do too many things all at the same time. You might be focusing on smaller habits or doing a little bit of something every day, but don't try to do 5 little things every day, because 5 things every day is now one big amount of effort that you need. Start small. Start with 1. Once that 1 is done and you've got it, move to the next one. Okay, so build your momentum slowly. Don't rush it. Take your time. Do 1 at a time. Okay, if you try and do too many at a time, you will overwhelm yourself. You'll be feeling like, oh, there's just too many things to do. I don't want to do this anymore, and you're going to stop. 1 little thing. For example, again, if we talk about losing weight, adding 1 glass of water to every meal. Once you're doing that without even thinking about it, then maybe you can go 1 piece of bread less every day, or whatever it is, whatever you decide, or 5 minutes of exercise every day. Whatever you decide that habit is, 1 at a time. When it becomes automatic, something that you don't think about, it's just happening, then you can add the next one. Okay. Then another thing that I think we often get told that we should be guilty about is that once you've decided on a habit and a goal, you're not allowed to change it. It's bullcrap, for a lack of better words. If you decide on a goal or a habit or something that you think is really going to work for you, but as you start doing it, you find that, actually, this is actually not what I want. This is not working for me. It's not working with my schedule. Instead of absolutely hating the process, just change the goal or change the habit. I mean, at the end of the day, it's you. You are the one who has to live with that and do that and take the action. If the action is not working for you, adapt, change it, be flexible. Don't feel guilty for changing the way that you want to do something. What works for one person does not necessarily work for another person. So you might get advice to do this thing, but that doesn't mean it's going to work for you, your life, your schedule, and your priorities. Find what works for you. Don't be afraid to change things and adapt when it comes to the habits that you build. It's okay to want to do something, but if you're going, you know what, actually this isn't for me, this is not what I want anymore, change it. And don't feel guilty about it. It's your life, okay? So then we're going to talk about the last thing that I think is really going to help you ease back into that English. And it's creating a study space that will help you learn and get into the mood of studying, practicing, or using English. And you're probably wondering, what does that even mean? Okay. So imagine this. Imagine that you had to learn all the things that you learned at school, but you didn't have to go to school for it. And you didn't have set times for it, and you didn't have any rituals or routines around it. It probably would have been a lot harder to learn math and English and science and all these things without having a specific environment for that. Now, I'm not telling you to join a university and go sit in a lecture. that's boring as hell. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is create a space for your study, for your goals. So for example, right now, I would find it really hard to teach my students if I was trying to do it in the living room where my husband might be watching TV. When we moved into this house, we knew, and I knew, that I needed to create a space that was going to help me focus on my students. So I have a table, I have an office, and I have all the things I need in order to focus and do my job. You need to do the same with your English. You need to create a space that can help you focus on your English when you want to, whatever fits in your schedule. Remember, at the end of the day, it's got to fit your lifestyle and your schedule. So here are things that you need to consider when creating your study space. Of course, I think the most common one is you need a space that's quiet, if possible, and comfortable. Okay. So I know that these aren't always possible, especially the quiet, but if you're in a space that isn't quiet, you can use things like noise cancelling headphones to help you with that. And also try not be in the middle of a space. Try be like in a corner where people aren't going to be walking past or bumping into you all the time. You want a space that's going to be quiet and comfortable and where you're not going to be disrupted all the time. So we also want to minimize distractions. So if you can move into a room that isn't used that often, okay, that will minimize your distractions. We also minimize distractions through cell phones, computers, notifications. If you know that it's really difficult for you to switch off your phone when you're studying, leave your phone in a different room, okay? Make it a no phone zone. If you need your phone for the actual study activity, turn your notifications off so that you are not distracted and tempted to go and see, who liked my post, and who commented on this post? I want to go see what's happening here, or who's trying to call me? If that is going to distract you, turn the notifications off. Okay. Another thing that often gets overlooked is lighting and ventilation. Right, in my room here, I've got a huge window in front of me. Now, most people might sit with their backs to the window, but I need the window for the light, for the camera, so that my students can see me. But it's also really nice to have this light in the room. If this room was dark and cramped and full of stuff, I probably wouldn't feel so comfortable in here. It would be dark and I wouldn't feel like I have energy, okay? When we have a lot of light, we have more energy, our brains, it just changes something in our brains. So if you can find a space that's well lit, maybe has a window or a breeze, that's going to do better when you're creating a study space. Because like I say, if your study space is crowded and dark and there's people all around and noisy, the chances of you wanting to actually go there and study English is very low. The more you have a space that's yours that makes you feel good, you're more likely to want to go to that space and do what you need to do. Okay, we're working with the psychology here, so that's important to remember. Okay, another thing that you can do is to organize your space and personalize your space. So make sure that all the things that you need for your study and practice is there. You need a book, make sure you got a book. You like to listen to music, make sure your radio or whatever you're going to play music on is there. You know that you like water or tea or whatever, make sure those things are in your space, but also make sure that it is organized. You know where everything is. Not all of us need clean space, so that's really depends on you. But the idea is that if you need something, it's there and you know where it is and you have access to it. If you sit down and you want to study, but your bottle of water isn't where it's supposed to be, you're going to spend 10 minutes of your study time looking for your bottle and filling it up. That's 10 minutes that you're not going to get back. All right, that's 10 minutes that you could have used for studying, using, or engaging with English. So keep that in mind, okay? Another thing that you can sort of do is create a study ritual. Now, I really, really like this. Something that I do when I know that I want to focus on my social media content, for example, the thing that I normally go and do is make myself a nice cup of tea. because as soon as I sit down with my cup of tea, my brain almost goes, it's time to get stuck into social media. It's just a trigger. It's a way of my brain associating, we're sitting with a cup of tea, so let's focus. So try and find this for yourself. Maybe you want to light a nice smelling candle every time you study. So every time you sit down, light your candle. That scent and that atmosphere that you create becomes your space, and it becomes your ritual, and your brain will associate that with study time. So basically, we want to get ourselves in the right mood and mindset when it comes to studying. Okay, so create a ritual. It could be getting a snack or your favorite snack. It could be making a cup of tea, lighting a candle, putting on a specific type of music or song, reading from your favorite book for 5 minutes before you begin. It can be anything. Okay, so figure out what could be a nice ritual for you to start or end your study session. Okay, so what are the advantages of having this study space, a space that is going to be your own and include hopefully all or most or some of these factors that I just mentioned? All right, psychological connection and association. All right, your mind is really powerful. We want to work with our psychology, not against our psychology. Also, you're less likely to have something called decision fatigue. Decision fatigue is when you have to make so many decisions that by the time you get to decision number 100, you're so tired that you just make a decision for the sake of making a decision, not because it's actually a good one or effective one. So the more that you have to make decisions on, well, what am I going to drink now? Or what am I going to play? Or what am I going to study? Or what resource am I going to use? The less of those decisions that you need to make, the better, because you're going to make better decisions. So the more that you can automate these things and just know exactly where you want to go and what you want to do, the more effective your study plan and your study time or use in English is going to be. Another benefit is it helps with that consistency. All right, remember, not intensity, consistency. If you've got a space that you look forward to and you enjoy being in, you're more likely to go to that space and do what you need to do to reach your English goals. All right, so it helps to make us more consistent because we want to be in that space. You also are less likely to procrastinate, okay? If you've created a space that's yours and a ritual, by the time you sat down and you started your ritual, your brain is already like, yes, let's do this. Let's go. I got this. Okay. So by creating the space and the rituals, you also avoid things like procrastinating, like putting it off or not doing it at all. So those are benefits of having a dedicated study space. It doesn't have to be a desk. It could be a part of your sofa in your living room with your noise cancelling headphones, a cup of tea on the table next to you with a water bottle and a candle. Whatever you have available to you, make it work for you, make it yours. Okay. All right, so some advice around creating a space that works for you is experiment. Okay, don't be afraid to change things up, try different rituals, okay, find a different space. If you're sitting on your sofa and your family just keeps bothering you, maybe try find another space. Okay, it could be your bedroom floor. It could be a spot in the kitchen that nobody ever goes to. Whatever. Experiment, change it up, find what works for you. Another thing is to create boundaries. And I think this is really important. If you're living with your family, create a boundary and tell them, this is my space, these are my things, please respect that, don't move it, don't disrupt me. When I go into this space, I'd like to be left alone, just because I am trying to achieve a goal. Okay, so try and create some good boundaries around that space. And keep it clean, of course. All right, keep it clean. Most of us, like I say, we don't generally like dirty, untidy spaces. Some of you are perfectly okay with that. But I find if you keep it clean, you're more likely, again, going to want to go into that space and study. So to kind of recap on all the things that we mentioned today in terms of easing yourself back into English, the first one was know your level, assess where you are right now. This will help you know what to focus on first so that you don't feel overwhelmed when you start your English study again. Knowing your strengths and weaknesses will help you sort of avoid the frustration of going, oh, well, what am I supposed to do? By doing this activity, you can ease back into English with a more stress-free mindset. This also applies to setting SMART goals and realistic goals. If your goals are unrealistic, if they don't really fit into your life and your plan, if you can't control the situations that you need in order to achieve your goals, that's really going to create a lot of stress because you're going to feel frustrated and you're going to feel like you're doing something wrong. So creating SMART goals is a great way to help you focus on the right things, but also to make sure that you are being realistic about what you want to achieve. The more unrealistic your goals are, the more stress and frustration you will create for yourself. So try set some SMART goals to help you really ease back into that English. Okay, the other thing was habits, my favorite thing. I love talking about habits. So I mentioned starting with micro habits, small habits. All right, you can use the 2-minute rule, which means just do that thing that fits with your SMART goal for 2 minutes a day. But then I also spoke about habit stacking, taking your new little micro habit and attaching it to another habit that you do, like brushing your teeth or making a cup of coffee in the morning or having your lunch at a specific time during the day. And the last thing that you can do to really relax you back into your English is to create a space that is warm, inviting, and makes you feel good and comfortable and like you want to be there. If you're trying to get back into English and you're trying to sit in a space where there's distractions and there's noise and mess and it's dark and all of these things, are you going to feel relaxed when you start your English journey again? Probably not. So create a study space or a place where you can practice and use and do all the things that you want to achieve with your English, a space that makes you feel good. Remember, there's a lot of psychology around it, so don't forget to use the psychology with yourself. Basically, work with it, not against it. Okay, so there we go. Those are just some things that you can do to ease into your English. What I do want to talk about now is I do obviously run a competition, or remember, not associated with YouTube. So the activity that you need to complete today is just let me know in the comments below, did you take a break this summer holiday? If you did, tell me where you went or what you did for the holiday. And if you didn't, tell me why. That's it. So just write a short paragraph, 2 or 3 sentences in the comments. In a week's time, if there are multiple comments, then I will do a little draw. And if you are picked, if you are the winner, you will get a free 50-minute session with me. Okay, so just include that in the comments and yeah, see if you get chosen for a 50-minute session with me, which you can use any way that you want. All right. So I know that we were very late today. All the technical issues hasn't been a lot of fun, but I managed to give you this valuable information. I hope you find it really, really useful and that you can take just one thing away from today and start implementing it and start improving your experience with English. I hope I've given you just one idea, one thing to think about, and I hope it works for you. So sorry that the summer holiday is over and that your break might be over, but here's to stress-free English, getting back into English in a very stress-free and relaxing way. Have a wonderful weekend. I will see you next time in my next live. If you have any suggestions, let me know in the comments. All right, have a great one. See you next time. Bye.